If you go back to 2014, there were about 600 people at Hytrol. Today, there's 1,700 people at Hytrol.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Jonesboro, 5-time reigning Club of the Year. Okay, Sam Hummelstein will introduce our program.
Well, it is my distinct honor to introduce our program today. A little personal note. Some of you may or may not. Well, Ray, you're probably the only one old enough to remember this, but Tom Loberg, the founder of Hytrol, was a member of this club. And in addition to that, many of you would not know this, there was a band of Rotarians. They weren't musicians, I should say. Tom played trumpet. Al Poston played trumpet in that group. I'm not sure if any of those other guys were even still around, but they were the Over the Hill Gang, and they were quite popular around our community. Having worked in the industrial and manufacturing arena for almost 40 years of my working career, I got to see Hytrol's impact on our community really firsthand. And when you look around the community at the Workforce Training Consortium and the development of the engineering programs at Arkansas State and well beyond that, each of those things and many more have Hytrol's fingerprint all over them. Our speaker today is David Peacock. David is the president of the Hytrol Conveyor Company and a member of the board of directors. He began his career at Hytrol as the executive vice president in 2014 and assumed the presidency in 2015. He has led the company to record years and expansive growth while implementing strategies to move Hytrol into the future and was appointed to the board of directors in 2018. During his tenure, Hytrol has completed multiple expansions, including establishing a new production facility in Fort Smith, Arkansas in early 21. And I said, I asked him, I said, how in the world do you open a whole new plant in the middle of a pandemic? And I think he'll have an answer for that when he gets up here. David has an extensive leadership background in manufacturing prior to coming to Hytrol. And he has extensive knowledge in things like lean manufacturing. Now, that doesn't mean skinny welders. For those of you who might not be familiar with what lean manufacturing is, but maybe he'll fill us in on that as well. He holds a bachelor's degree from the Citadel and a master's degree from Webster University. He's married to Amy Peacock, who also served our country as a member of the United States Air Force. Please join me in a warm Rotary welcome for David Peacock.
Good afternoon. When I saw y'all hand the mic to Al, I text back to the office and said I might be a little late getting back there. So I'm glad to see that he kept it a little shorter than I'd expected him to. So I had a meeting this morning, by the way. This is off subject, but it's too entertaining to at least for me. I was in a meeting for about an hour and a half, and I had my phone, and there's only one person on my phone. There's two. My daughter can, but she very rarely texts in, and so typically when I'm at work, it won't ring or do anything to let me know that I'm getting texts or emails, with the exception of Amy and Megan. So I'm sitting in this meeting for an hour and a half, and my phone is blowing up. Every time I turn around, it's ringing again, and it's my wife. And she's been out of town. She was down in Austin with our daughter for the last 2 weeks, and she came back this weekend. And for the first time this morning, she was getting in her vehicle to go somewhere, and the battery's dead. So there might be a business opportunity there somewhere. So, but it's I was like, I can't help you. You're on your own. Yeah, I'll help you when I get home. But knowing my wife, she's already gotten it fixed. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I am not, this part of my job is probably the least favorite thing that I get to do. If you give me a chance to go out in the shop and work with folks out there, go deal with customers, go to sites, I love doing all those types of things. With one exception about public speaking. You give me a chance to talk about Hytrol, I will do that all day long because the things that are going on out there is truly remarkable. I'm sure most of y'all have been there, but if you haven't been there in the last couple of years, it's a completely different organization. And my one charter is to make sure that I protect what Tom put in place and make sure that we continue to treat people the way that he wanted us to treat our workforce and the community and stay engaged. And so I try to, me and my team keep that in the front of our minds every day when we're making decisions. So let me talk about, there's really two different topics that I'm going to talk about this morning. The first one is workforce development. And then I would talk a little bit about Fort Smith and what's transpired over the last year. Can I just hit enter? Yeah, good. So academic partnerships. You know, if you spend any time around Hytrol, you know we like to control our own destiny. If we can make it, we're going to make it ourselves and not have to rely on somebody outside. You know, when I first got here, we used to have pullers that were lagged in Memphis. They did a great job, but their lead time was 8 days, and that wasn't something that was going to be successful for us. And so we brought that technology in-house, and we could do it in 2 hours after we once got started. And so we've made a huge investment over the 75 years to make sure that we're as dependent upon ourselves as we possibly can be, and as least likely to be dependent on others as we need to be. And when we do, we have long-standing relationships. Our steel supplier has been our steel supplier for over 35 years, and that's just unheard of in our industry. But it's always paid off for us. They have never run us out of steel. Even this past year, steel prices have escalated through the roof. Some people had a hard time getting access to steel. We never had those challenges. And in fact, the few people that we use, we make taper tubes. We make them up to 43 inches. Anything longer than that, we have to outsource it. The company we outsourced for could not get access to steel, but we could because of the relationships that we've had for 35 years with those folks. And so, so if we go to that extent for material that we need to build conveyors, why wouldn't we apply that same philosophy to the workforce that we have? The workforce is much more important to us in the big scheme of things than steel or rollers or pulleys or motors or any of those types of things. And so about 4 years ago, we created a position for an academic partnership manager. And the lady that's in that role right now is Christy Valentine. You may know her. She's from the community. She's if you've spent any time around Christy, you don't walk past Christy and don't get involved in a conversation. She's fantastic, and she's perfectly suited for this role. But we would have probably 20 different people in the organization that were involved in conversations at the high school level, at ASU Newport, at A-State, even Arkansas or Missouri S&T, you name the schools. And there were a bunch of conversations going on, and there was no rhyme or reason to those. And so we weren't getting the best information from those institutions so we could help them, and they weren't getting the best information from us so that they could help us. And so we created this position, and Christy's been doing it now for, I think this is her second year. So why do we do it? Obviously, we want to make sure that we have access to the folks that we need. If you go back to 2014, there were about 600 people at Hytrol. Today, there's 1,700 people at Hytrol. Unemployment in Jonesboro, we all know, is at 3%, a little bit less than that. Finding people to come to work is a huge challenge. And so we want to make sure that we're reaching out to the high schools for those kids who aren't going to go on to college, so that they understand the opportunities that they have. And later in the presentation, you'll see some pictures of some things that we've done with the different schools. But it needs to be mutually beneficial. I tell everybody, I get a chance every Monday morning to talk to the new hires for an hour about who we are as a company and some of the things that we believe in. We don't hire anybody that we want to come to work for 3 months. When we hire you, we have an award that we give everybody that's been there for 40 years. We want everybody to have that plaque when they reach retirement. Well, if we do, if we have that expectation, that's a two-way street. We have to make sure that we're giving them the opportunities to have a career and to grow professionally and personally. And if we don't, then we're not holding up our end of the bargain. And so when we put these programs in place, sure, it's not fully altruistic. There's reasons why Hytrol is doing it. There's reasons why we're doing it, because it benefits Hytrol. But if it's not benefiting the community, if it's not benefiting the individuals, then that's not going to be sustainable, and we're not going to be successful long-term. So when we do that, we look at the relationship with the student, with the educators, and with the company as overall. And we're very intentional about it. So we look at, if you want to be an engineer, how do we help you be the best possible engineer? That's while you're at school at A-State, but it's also once you become an engineer at Hytrol, what are the programs we have in place to help you grow professionally? If you want to be a welder, it's the same thing. How do we help you be the best person that you possibly be? We understand what your career aspirations are and how do we put things in place to help you grow? And then it's in Hytrol's best interest that Northeast Arkansas continues to grow. Sam and I were talking while we were eating. I belong to Arkansas Research Alliance. And when I first got down there and participated, it's a organization that takes the 5 research universities in Arkansas and several industries. Walmart's is on there, Entergy's on there, a lot of big companies in Arkansas. Well, Hytrol's been fortunate enough that I get to go and represent Hytrol in Northeast Arkansas in this organization. When I first got there, it was really focused on Central Arkansas and Northwest Arkansas. Well, I'm very competitive. You know, I can't remember if y'all mentioned I was a Marine or not. You know, I don't mind getting in a fight for the right reasons. And so making sure that Northeast Arkansas gets the same level of respect that Northwest Arkansas and Central Arkansas gets only makes sense to me because it's beneficial to the community. It's beneficial to the state, whether everybody in the state realizes it or not. And it's obviously beneficial to Hytrol as well. And so we look at how does our programs affect us, how does it affect the individuals in the community, and how does it affect the community overall. You can see here some pictures of, you know, and we obviously we want to be the place that everybody wants to work at. You know, I hear stories all the time back in the day that you had to know somebody at Hytrol to be able to get a job at Hytrol. We want to get back to that situation. I take a great deal of pride when I ask folks in Monday morning how many people are related to somebody who already works at Hytrol, and we have never had a meeting where at least 1 or 2 people didn't raise their hands out of the 8 or 10 people. So that tells us that we're doing the right thing. We're treating people the way that they need to be treated. They deserve to be treated. Otherwise, why would you recommend us to your cousins or your brothers or your sons and daughters, whomever? And so if you look on the left-hand side, mentioned I went to the Citadel. I get one of the benefits of my job is we recruit from a lot of schools, and Arkansas, the University of Arkansas is 4 hours away. And so we drew a line that says, okay, every school within 4 hours of Jonesboro and Hytrol is fair game. And so who has those programs that will benefit us? And so whether it's Missouri S&T, it's Memphis, it's Ole Miss, we're going to go and recruit those. Well, when you draw the line, the Citadel's not inside the 4 hours. But for the purposes of recruiting, we do recruit from the Citadel. They have one of the oldest engineering programs, and I'm one of 4 Citadel graduates that work at Hytrol. And I joke all the time, the closest Citadel club is in Memphis, and they meet on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, the first Saturday of every month. Al, I'm with you, man. I'm not getting up at 7 o'clock to drive to Memphis. And so if we keep this up, we'll have a Citadel club here in Jonesboro here in a couple of years. So the young man that you see there graduated a year ago, and is one of our 3 engineers that's working there. And we sent him back to try to recruit some of his not classmates, but soon to be fellow alumni. In the center, you can see there's a young lady there with Christy. That was at Nettleton High School. We have a program with those folks. And on the far right-hand side, that's with the school at Valley View. And they have a forklift certification program. And when she was telling me about that, it scared me a little bit that you'd put 16 and 17-year-olds on a forklift and teach them how to drive. But it's, you know, if they know that that's the career path that they want to go, that they don't plan on going to college, we're going to help them understand what their opportunities are. Forklift operators make better money than somebody that just comes in without any skills. And so if we can help them with that, then we're going to continue to do so. Here's a picture of last year's intern class. We had kids from all over. We typically, a couple of years pre-pandemic, we did 33 interns, which was too many. They're not going to get the experience that they need. And the last thing you're going to do as an intern is sit at a desk and not, file or do something like that. So we shrank the number down. Even last year, we got between the first iteration of the first spike of COVID and the Delta. And so we were able to bring back engineers into the office, and we brought in that group from several different universities. One of the things that we do is we actually pay for housing. And so we work with A-State. So if you're an intern and you go into Ole Miss, or you're an intern at you're a college student at A-State, and in the summer you go home to Little Rock or to Jackson, Mississippi, or someplace else, you don't have a place to stay, so it would make it difficult for you to do an internship in Jonesboro. Well, we found that by offering to pay for them to stay in the dorms, we have both an professional program, but also a social program associated with our internships. This year, we're going to do somewhere around 12 or 14 interns. We've got over 100 applicants that want to come and be an intern at Hytrol, and it's a direct pipeline into the engineers that we need going forward. One of the challenges we actually have is Ben Moyer runs engineering for us. He's done it for 2 years now. We have about 140 engineers that work in his department. We've lost 2 engineers in 2 years in terms of attrition that left Hytrol to go work somewhere else. And when you think about the opportunities that they have, they could go work in our industry anywhere in the country. And the reality is the IP network pays better than we do as an OEM, but they've elected to stay with us and continue to grow. And so the fact that Ben's only lost 2 is a huge feather in his cap. So, but this is a huge opportunity for us to identify those folks, make sure they understand who we are and how we operate and what we're going to ask them to do before we actually extend offers to them, so that we do maintain them once they join us. The beauty is that, with COVID, most of my engineers have been working from home for the last almost 2 years now. The average output for our engineering department, almost the exact same headcount. The output pre-pandemic was $800,000 a day. Today, they're doing $1.4 to $1.5 million a day in output. It's not because we've added a bunch of people. It's because we've been able to retain them, and they've gotten 2 years more experience, and so their output has gotten that much better. And so the intern program is a huge success for us. We also have an apprenticeship program with ASU Newport for our auto draft people. If you go back, what used to be drafts people, we now call them AutoCAD designers. And that takes people off the shop floor. They enroll in ASU Newport. They go through classes during working hours, and then we put them to work on computers as doing a lot of the drawing work for the engineers. So that's a lot of the things that we do to make sure that we have access to the talent that we need. I want to talk a little bit about Fort Smith because I get a little self-conscious. I go to a lot of things at the chamber, and they talk about growth in Jonesboro, and I'm always sitting there going, because we made the decision that when we expanded, we were going to expand somewhere other than Jonesboro. And that was primarily, there's 2 reasons. One, if you recall the timing of it, it was shortly after the tornado came through, the first tornado, my first tornado in Jonesboro 2 years ago. And it was about a mile from our facility. And if it had hit our facility, we all know the struggle that Canfield has with building a new facility because they got hit. We understood the risk to us as an organization. But unemployment's also low. Building space is a challenge. And so we looked across the entire country at one time, we had 178 locations on the map that we were interested in pursuing. And we kept whittling it down, and it got down to 3 locations: LaGrange, Georgia, Opelika, Alabama, and Fort Smith. Just as a side note, Opelika, anybody familiar with Opelika? It's close to Auburn University. My daughter went to Auburn. There was no way we were putting a facility that close to Auburn University. So they didn't realize it, but it was dead on arrival before it even became an option. So it turns out that for lots of reasons, Fort Smith's the right place. The governor, I got a phone call and said, hey, the governor wants to make sure that you understand he wants you to stay in your second facility to stay in Arkansas. And so I just sort of assumed that at some point somebody would call me, and then they would say, hey, we've got the governor on the telephone for you. Can you hold? Well, at that point in time, my phone rings and it's Asha Hutchinson on the telephones, on his cell phone. It's not even blocked. And he says, you got my cell phone. If you have any questions at all about why we think it's in your interest to stay in Arkansas, please give me a call. It was that personal touch. Fort Smith is close enough. It's 4 hours away that twice a day we run trucks back and forth. We have 3 trailers and a truck and a truck that hauls those trailers back and forth twice a day. You wouldn't think that there's that much interaction between the 2 facilities, but we build a lot of things in Jonesboro that they need in Fort Smith and vice versa. And so that truck runs back and forth twice. We started out once a day. We really started out thinking, okay, it'll be 3 times a week. It's probably the most that we'll need to do it. It quickly became once a day, and beginning of this year, it became twice a day. And so we couldn't do that if we were in Opelika or in LaGrange, Georgia, because it's 8, 9, 10 hours to get to either one of those locations. The driver would have to spend a night in a hotel every day that they went there, and that doesn't really align with the core values of family that we have. To ask somebody every other night to be on the road away from their family, that's not who we are. And so Fort Smith allows us to do that on a daily basis. And then the workforce in Fort Smith has been truly remarkable. When we first started, we were just going to do parcel. And we were going to do about $70 million a year. The first year was about $35 million. Then we were going to ramp up and get to $70 million a year. Philip has done such a good job with the team there. We've been able to hire the folks that we had. We made some really smart decisions on the front side. I say I get to take credit of some of the decisions my team made. For example, the paint system. We could have bought a paint system that met the requirements for Fort Smith as it was originally designed. It was $7 million. Or we could spend $9 million and put the exact same paint system we have here in there, even though it had twice the capacity that we needed. But we were able to take the lessons we learned from this system and put it in Fort Smith. Well, when we did, we had twice as much paint capacity as we needed. And the first thought was that it would be a redundant system for Jonesboro. If our paint system went down for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, it would be painful, but we could support operations with that paint system. That's why we made the decision. Well, because of all the things aligning, about 8 months ago, the board made the decision that we were going to move E24 to Fort Smith as well to free up capacity in Jonesboro to do some other things. Our lead time, if you want to buy a piece of gravity from us right now, you got to wait 35 weeks. It used to be 2 to 4 weeks to get the same piece of gravity. We've got to increase the production and our output to be able to be competitive with lead times. And so by moving E24 to Fort Smith, it allowed us to work on those types of things. Well, if we hadn't built that paint system that we did, we wouldn't have had the capacity to make those types of decisions. And so if you haven't noticed, when I do these things, and you get me talking about Hytrol, I wonder. So I have no idea how much I've messed up these slides, but I will act like I know exactly what I'm talking about when it pops up. So bear with me. So the first thing that we did was we wanted to make sure that we took the culture that we have here and we replicated it at Fort Smith. And so Sam said, how do you stand up a facility in the middle of a pandemic? It's real easy. You convince Philip Poston that he wants to go live in Fort Smith, and you give him the responsibility and you let him worry about it. Because as good a warrior as I am, I'm 2A ball at the best. Maybe on a good day I might make AAA ball in comparison to Philip. Philip's major league skill levels when it comes to worrying. I know every night he goes to bed worrying about what's going on at Fort Smith. I don't have to. I get to sleep like a baby now because Philip's down there. But he wants to. He led the charge in making sure that it was the same culture in Fort Smith that we have here. So, for example, we put air conditioning in our facility here in 2016. Beforehand, it would be 115 degrees in the summertime, humidity at 80%. It was brutal. And I came from San Antonio. I thought I knew hot. I knew nothing about hot when it was compared to what the environment that we had in our facility. So we were able to come up with a solution that put air conditioning in the facility in 2016. When we went to Fort Smith, the first thing we said was, it's going to have air conditioning too. Guess what? We're the only manufacturer in Fort Smith currently that has air conditioning, but I guarantee you, CapEx and a lot of companies in Fort Smith are planning on putting air conditioning in their facility, because if not, we'll keep poaching their people from them. So we say we've hired 283. We had an event last week. We hired another 53. We want to get to just short of 400 The original plan was 272 people. But with the E24 moving there, it's just short of 400 people. So they've done a really good job there. Just a quick thing about timing. We signed the lease on that building. It's the old Woolport Distribution Center, if you're familiar with Fort Smith. We signed the lease on December 23rd of 2020. We did the announcement and took possession of the building on January 4th. And we told everybody we were going to deliver the first product out of Fort Smith on March 1st. Nobody believes you could do that. If you asked me, I was like, yeah, we can do that. Can we really do that? But on March 1st, we delivered the first product. On August 2nd, the paint system came online the way it was supposed to. Just the things that have lined up have been as well executed as it could possibly have done. And that's because of Philip. Kathy Cole went down there with him. He took Craig and Thad and Kurt, or the other folks that went down there. The first person we hired was a young lady named Azizi to run HR. They have done an incredible job of recruiting people and getting them to come in and stay to work. You can see the first year we did $33 million. I always go back to being really competitive. I want people, everybody in Jonesboro knows who Hytrol is. I want everybody in Arkansas to know who Hytrol is. And so we're much better known now because of our facility in Fort Smith, not because of what's going on at Fort Smith, but just because we have more voices and a bigger presence in the state. And so I think that's good it's absolutely great for Hytrol, but I think it's good for Northeast Arkansas and Arkansas as a whole. You can see Philip up there. We have a program where if you recruit somebody and they stay for 6 months, then you get $500. We actually pay the tax. The worst thing that in my mind is you give somebody a check and say, hey, we're going to give you $500. And oh, by the way, there's $100 in taxes or whatever it might be. So we pay the taxes on it. You get $500 to go out and recruit people. It's been extremely successful. Bottom right, you can see some of the folks that work at Hytrol at Fort Smith. We have a couple of electronic billboards that we rent in the city, and we actually use folks because they have families that work in the city, and we want to personalize who we are with as many people in Fort Smith as possible. So I'd like to say that some of these are all my ideas, but Philip's a pretty creative guy. When you know, you got to. My fear is that he's going to grow more and more into Al as he gets older and older. So. Never. You better not tell him I said that. So that's the facility. You can see it's the building's 600,000 square feet. We lease 300,000, which was half the building, obviously. I'm a Marine. I can do math. 600 divided by 2 is 300. And I didn't even have to take my shoes off. But anyway, that's the building. We very quickly realized we needed more space, and you'll see a picture here in a second. We leased another 100,000 square feet. Our lease is it's got 3 option periods, but ultimately it's 25-year lease. We have the first right of refusal. If the company wants to sell that building, they have to come to us first, and we've already negotiated the price. So you think in 20 years, if they want to sell that building, we get to pay 2020 prices for it instead of 2040 prices for it. So, and you can see new entrance, some of the other things, the steel loading dock that we put in place. We spent $20 million on equipment, lasers, paint system, all the different things to put in that building. Funny thing was, when we ordered the lasers, we didn't know where we were going. And the gentleman who we buy all our equipment from pointed out to us that there was no way all this equipment was going to fit in Jonesboro. And we just smiled and said, don't worry about it. Because he didn't know we were planning on going somewhere else when we ordered all the equipment. But with 3 lasers, brake presses, we spent just over $3 million in building improvement. The air conditioning was one of the things that we mentioned, a lot of things that get it in shape for us. Philip loves showing the picture on the top, not because it's got a picture of the building, but because of all the cars that are in the parking lot that now work at Hytrol there. You can see upper left is the paint system. The 3 paint booths. You can change colors on that in about 5 minutes. We have one of those. We have 4 paint booths in Jonesboro. Only one of them is a Color Max system. The other 3 take a little bit longer to change, about a half an hour to change. You can change colors in any of those 3 in 5 minutes. In the bottom left, you can see the lasers. The bottom right, you see welding, and in the top right, you see where we make rollers at the facility there. So it's a mini Jonesboro. We don't have a red cell, which is all the CNC machines. That's why so much stuff gets built in Jonesboro and shipped down there. One of the things I love about it is we're in the process right now of putting a conveyor system at the end of fabrication. The parts will go from there to the paint system on a conveyor belt, not a belt, on rollers because of the weight. But it actually demonstrates to visitors that not only do we make conveyors, but we understand how to employ them in the operations. And Fort Smith allows us to learn experiences from there to take advantage of here in Jonesboro. A couple of other pictures. Upper left is parcel. That's what we originally started out to. It's parcel assembly. On the far right is E24 assembly. On the left is staging for things that are getting ready to go out in trucks. And on the bottom right, in our industry right now, backlog, the demand is so great that you got to get in line before you even have a building. And we'll hold on to the product until it's actually time they have the building in place. And so that's allowed us to get a lot of business that we wouldn't have had. And that's a big part of the reason why we needed another 100,000 square feet. So I don't know whether this was too quick or too long, but I will, if you want me to, I can go for another couple hours. But if you can't tell, I love the opportunity. You may not know, I've moved around in my career. I've lived in Jonesboro since September of 14. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in my entire life. I get bored real easy. I don't get bored at Hytrol. I love every day the things that are going on and the opportunities to make a difference that we have at that company. So, questions?
Yeah, Ray Keller. I'm just going to make a comment. I know Skipper will remember, and I don't know anyone else in here that's, as you've already alluded, how old I am. But 40 years ago or so, we decided we wanted to capture Tom to come out here and to tell the Hytrol story. And as I remember, Roy Jolly was the arm squeezer that Tom to come out. And out of 44 years of attending meetings, it's one of those top 5 meetings that I'll never forget, because he told the story of coming to Jonesboro on a wing and a prayer. He didn't have anything. And he met with the financial leaders of Jonesboro, and they bought into his vision. And he told that story about the partnership between Jonesboro and Hytrol. And my big regret was we didn't record that. I hope you have a video of him telling the history of Hytrol. But it's always been a shining star for Northeast Arkansas. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, sir. We do have video of him and a couple other folks talking about Hytrol and his whole vision. So we're very fortunate to have that. We actually, they published a book. I don't know if y'all familiar with the Hytrol story. It was written probably 15 years ago, and we're republishing it this year since it's our 75th anniversary.
Okay.
Thank y'all very much.
David, I have a small token of our appreciation for you being here today. Appreciate your time. Very interesting program, very informative. Rotarians, please join me in the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Okay, thank you for coming. We're adjourned.